Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology in the chart of Tyler Bariss. Some of you may have heard of him. I saw a story about him on the ID Investigation Discovery Network. I believe the show was Web of Lies. And what he had been doing was he gained some infamy by sending out, it was like these bogus swatting calls, I guess you can call them. He would send out using fake numbers. Somehow he would be calling different police departments and saying there's a bomb that's going to detonate here, or this place or that place. And one time, one of his calls went too far, and it wound up leading to a death of somebody in Kansas. And person that was killed in Kansas, I believe the name was Andy Finch. He was not even part of this whole prank. And he winds up getting killed. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Tyler Bariss's chart, and I don't have a time of birth for him, so I had to improvise again, do a solar/sunrise chart, which puts the the sun is, of course, it's in Scorpio. He was born November 9th, 1992. And the thing about is, right there, Scorpio, seen as an extreme sign, and can go, it seems like, Scorpio can go either way. It could be somebody that could be, the consummate, sleuth or detective, and somebody that can investigate crimes good, or somebody that just notoriously commits them. And in this case, the Scorpio energy, sadly, was used to, for mischievous purposes, and to manipulate. And law enforcement, and law enforcement can be connected with Scorpio, ironically enough. And the thing about this is, I look at his chart. One thing that stands out, okay, with the sun in Scorpio, he also has Pluto conjunct his sun. And it's interesting, when people have their sun conjunct Pluto in the chart, can be very paradoxical. It can be somebody that wants to have, their power in the limelight, but at the same time wants a private life, a mysterious one. So one wants to have their privacy, but wants to have certain acclaim and notoriety. And the thing about this is, he gained certain notoriety by doing something in a surreptitious Scorpio manner. It's done, because the conjunction is in Scorpio, that's an indicator that it can be done. Notoriety that he wanted to get was done in a surreptitious manner, and he was able to maintain his own private life in the process, especially when you have this in Scorpio, because the sun in Scorpio, the basic character, of course, can be mysterious and private. And the thing about this too is, he also, oddly enough, he has his moon in Taurus. And it's interesting because the moon, it's such a contrast. Based on the solar/sunrise chart, his moon does oppose the sun. And the sun in Scorpio is about crisis, and it tells me that he wanted to create crisis and upheaval, and sadly he was proficient at this. But the moon in Taurus is more about the emotional needs, being connected with creature comforts, calmness, stability, peace, tranquility, things that are comfortable for him. Maybe what this indicated, the fact with the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Taurus, is that what he did, as far as the sun in Scorpio, that want, in this case, to manipulate, the basic want to manipulate, he did this with more stubbornness, with the moon being in Taurus. And it was harder for him perhaps to get away from it, because because of the moon being in Taurus. Taurus, there's a very strong aversion to change. And sun in Scorpio, you have the sun on a fixed sign, and then you have the moon in a fixed sign on top of it. Now, on the show, on the Investigation Discovery Network, I believe it was Web of Lies, it showed him that he was staying, I think it was his grandmother, I don't know if it was his aunt or his grandmother, it wasn't with his mother. That I can remember fairly well. And thing about that is, and at the time he was like maybe early 20s. And I'm looking at, the chart. He has a couple indicators of, divorce in his between his mother and father. Now, based on the solar/sunrise time, his moon does square his Saturn, and often when people have the moon in adverse aspect to their Saturn, it's an indicator of either a separation or divorce by the parents, because the moon can reflect the mother, Saturn, the father, and the thing about this is, and also the sun, based on the solar sunrise time, is opposing the moon, and the sun can be connected with the biological father, and again the moon can be connected with the mother. Now, the thing about so it tells me there was a likelihood of at least a separation of the mother and father. Maybe he didn't have that full parental image at the time, when he was growing up. Maybe the father wasn't with him. It might have led to a lack of discipline. His Saturn is in Aquarius, and I know it's generational, but that can give limitations and difficulties with friendships. Maybe he felt limited in society as well, and it falls in the solar/sunrise chart. It falls in the third house of communication. The thing about this too is, it's interesting, again, not to be redundant, but in the solar/sunrise chart, he has Neptune in the second house, but it's conjunct the second, third house cusp. So that could be like the dissolving, the dissipation of rational thinking. And having Capricorn on that third house cusp can give certain depressive thinking as well, and despondency. And as far as you might be somewhat despondent. Sometimes depression could affect rational thinking if that was the case. Now, what modifies that, in his case, he does have his Mercury in Sagittarius. So it's certain, at times then it could tell me that his thinking was very optimistic and upbeat, and maybe that was ultimately to his detriment, and that's what may have led to him getting caught. He was actually ironically enough, being Sun in Scorpio, the quintessential manipulator in a negative manifestation for Scorpio, he was actually outmaneuvered by law enforcement. And at that time, I would say likely, based on the transit at the time, he was apprehended on December 29, 2017. Now, transit Neptune looks like it was around 11 degrees Pisces, which would be making a loose square to his Mercury. Now, shortly before the apprehension, perhaps transit Neptune actually was squaring his natal Mercury, and if that's the case, that can cloud your thinking a little bit, and not be as judicious, and be more susceptible, to being beguiled, I guess you could say, deceived by others, being more gullible in your thinking at the time. And also having Mercury being in Sagittarius, being over optimistic. Maybe he was so delusional in his thinking at this time, with this squared Neptune to his natal Mercury, that he didn't think that he could get caught or outmaneuvered. And in this case, the Sun in Scorpio, House of Cards, did ultimately fall down on him. And the thing about this is as well, and I'm looking at the chart, is that he has a square between Chiron and Leo, in the Sun in Scorpio. Based on the solar sunrise chart, the Chiron is at the 22nd degree, which is a critical degree, and it's in Leo. It tells me, sadly, having this Chiron in Leo by itself can indicate some suffering. It could be on an emotional level due to not getting maybe praised or lauded or attention. And in some cases, when you have Chiron like this, maybe it manifested in some extreme behavior, Sun in Scorpio can be extremist as it is, and then you have the Chiron in Leo squaring it. He might have felt inept. I mean, Chiron in the chart can reflect ineptitude, weakness, and it could be in his case where he just felt like he wasn't getting enough being laud enough, not enough praise or attention. So that might have played a role astrologically in him resorting to such extreme measures in order to get attention, sadly. Hold on a moment, people. It was interesting. He had been in jail prior to getting apprehended on December 29, 2017. And I look at his chart. I mean, when he came out, he basically resumed to what he was doing before, and he was going on to the online computers at the library to do his dastardly deeds, basically. And I look in his chart, he does have Uranus conjunct Neptune in Capricorn in the second house of self-worth, and doing something deceptive. I mean, Uranus could be connected with the internet, social media. Neptune is deception. And he wanted in Capricorn his authority. Perhaps this manifested him being the authority. I'm trying to be an authority on this, and being in the second house made him feel better about himself. Self-worth and self-esteem. But Capricorn, the fact that it's connected with authority, may have played the role as well in having these, tricking these policemen, authority figures. Neptune is generational, but Neptune in Capricorn, perhaps that manifests in deceiving people in authority. And he did it, the conjunction to Uranus could indicate doing it through an online means. Now, sadly, what I noticed too is that the person, and I'm thinking, you might want to confer this on there, and I believe his name was Andrew or Andy Finch, was the person that got shot as a result of this prank. That that this person had been I'm sorry, I gotta have to look at the name again. I'm forgetting his name for some reason. I'm sorry. The person named Tyler Bariss, was part of this prank, and it went terribly wrong. It led to the death of Andy. I believe the name was Andy Finch, and his when I looked at his birthday, interestingly enough, Andy Finch is, or if that is his name, you might want to check that on the internet. I think it's Andrew Finch or Fish, Sun in Pisces, and there's a good possibility, based on the time of birth, depending on time of birth, that the Sun would be at 29 degrees Pisces, which of course would be conjunct the fixed star sheet, and that could be, the indicator of, I would say, homicide. Pisces, and it's 29 degrees is the degree of endings in astrology. And the Sun is about our life. And in this case, it was a life that ended. And it was through deceptive and duplicitous means. And sadly, this wasn't even because of Andy Finch, because of anything that he did. But somebody sadly had given in the prank, gave a bogus address. And it wasn't connected with the person that actually was part of the prank. This prank, it was he just used this address for whatever reason, and Andrew Finch, or if he took the bait. Sadly, he went they were showing on the show on ID on I believe Web of Lies, when he was coming out of his home, he saw these flashing lights in front of his house, and he came out and he got shot because of the bogus SWAT call. And the thing about it is, too, at the time of this, when this happened, transit Chiron in Pisces was actually conjunct Andrew Finch's, it was conjunct his natal Venus. And you're thinking, well, how could that have any significance astrologically? Well, what it is Venus in Pisces can have enjoyment and relaxing. And when they showed the scene on the ID network, is that he was watching television. He was relaxing. Venus could be about what we enjoy. Pisces can be about relaxing and loafing. Transit Chiron was conjunct his natal Venus. Chiron is about wounds, physical wounds. This happened at a time when he got up to see what the lights were going, what was going on outside, and at that time he had been, enjoying himself. I'd say watching television, and television can have a connection with Pisces as well because it's about Pisces connected with films, and it's terrible that something like this had to have transpired and taken place. But the thing is, too, another thing I noticed is that in transit, when Tyler, again, I have to look at the name again, Tyler Bariss, Tyler Bariss. When Tyler Bariss was apprehended, transit Jupiter was conjunct his natal sun. And the significance of that astrologically is the fact that Jupiter can have a connection with the law. Jupiter is the law. The sun, of course, is the self, the physical body, the identity. Has a connection with the physical body. It's the true self. And the law, it's an indicator of the law catching up with him, apprehending him at this time. And the sun is about our life. And this was a life he lived in mystery. It was one being in Scorpio of mystery, of secrecy, of playing games, being manipulation, and it was sadly one that was corrupt because he was doing things that were illegal. I don't know if you call it spoof calls or they were calls he was using, I guess, like burner accounts numbers, and they weren't able to trace him, but the law managed to outmaneuver him. And again, I'll reiterate what I said previously. Law did manage to outmaneuver him. He wound up, again, the Scorpio House of Cards managed to come to a resounding thud, and in most cases, good does triumph over things that are nefarious. And it's interesting that you'll see, again, not to be redundant with this, but you'll see some Scorpio people. They either become like these mastermind criminals, or you see others that just go completely the opposite way, and they become, again, consummate detectives, investigators, super sleuths. They actually do things to combat and counter things that are nefarious, and instead of getting involved in nefarious activities. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment, and until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.